Thank you all so much. This is the Human Expressions 2025 Juror Talk. Today you're joined by myself, Amani Freeman. I'm the Exhibitions Manager for the Maryland Federation of Art. And a few words about the MFA and what it is we do. The MFA is a visual arts nonprofit organization that hosts more than 40 exhibitions every year. Our mission is to make connections in the local and online communities through art, with exhibits and events in Circle Gallery in Annapolis, Maryland, online and in numerous alternative venues. We provide artists of all genres, media, and backgrounds with the opportunity to exhibit works selected by professionally credentialed jurors and to be recognized with monetary awards. Artists do not have to be members to enter our exhibitions. However, members do have several advantages, such as lesser entry fees, access to networking, and additional exhibition opportunities. If you're interested in learning more and becoming a member, please visit our membership page on our website, mdfedart.com/membership. Now, a few words on the exhibition and why it is we are here today. So Human Expressions is actually a brand new exhibition. It's its first iteration this year. And we looked to kind of reinvent the portrait through color, form, and composition. Of course, the portrait is something that's been around in art for millennia. The portrait in and of itself has been a powerful medium through which artists can explore identity, emotion, and the essence of the human condition. Human Expressions invites artists to reimagine and push the boundaries of this traditional genre, encouraging the exploration of new ways to convey the complexities of human existence and experience. This exhibition seeks works that capture the depth of human expression through innovative approaches to portraiture, focusing on the transformative use of, like I said, color, form, and composition. Now today, we're lucky and grateful to be joined by a juror, Samuel Dylan Ewing. Sam has over a decade of experience working in museums, higher educations, and arts foundations. His notable curatorial credits include Writing for Tear Gas 2022 and Photography and Memory 2019 at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. He's an award-winning educator with experience in classroom instruction and course management. His scholarship has been published in multiple peer-reviewed journals, in addition to interviews and essays geared towards a variety of audiences. As a public speaker, Sam has delivered over 24 professional presentations, including invited lectures at universities and arts institutions. Sam's scholarship strives to communicate the role that visual culture plays in the creation of liberatory knowledge. His research takes seriously the lessons of solidarity embedded in works of art, from their moments of production to their modes of distribution, circulation, and reception. These lessons show how visual practices can bind communities together in our intersecting fights for a better world free of.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amani. And thank you to all of the artists who submitted works to this exhibition. It's been a real privilege to get to serve as a juror for this show. As I said, the artists who submitted works it was really incredible. I think, Amani, maybe you can correct me. There were over 300 submissions for this show, and there were really exceptional qualities, really in every work that pushed me to think about, what are the possibilities for portraiture in this moment? I came away with the clear impression, right, that portraiture is still a relevant and a potent vehicle for considering the self as it's shaped through things like society and technology and history and culture. Um, I think what stood out to me most was just the impressive range of approaches taken by all of the artists, which made the selection process really challenging, but really fun at the same time. And so I think in my selections, I tried to really draw from the pieces that I think, spoke most forcefully to me. And so I'm kind of excited to talk about them a little bit and explore really, like I mentioned, the range of approaches taken to this theme. Yeah, starting with the honorable mentions and this reimagined bust of Hercules. I think what interested me the most about this was the transformation of a really kind of traditional mode of sculpture. This a bust of Hercules from an ancient Roman sculpture. It made me think of the Farnese Hercules, like a really kind of important and iconic work of art that really has been used as a model, like as a pedagogical model for students throughout the centuries, learning to sculpt, learning about the expressive potentialities in the sculptural medium. But here, right, we have this very traditional form, this very traditional motif, reimagined through contemporary production techniques, right? This is a 3D printed version of a Hercules sculpture. And what I found particularly interesting, right, is that the mode of production is also revealed to us through these kind of sculptural cutouts, where we can see the patterned extrusion of material underneath the surface of the Hercules form. So this to me is really about, again, reimagining and reinterpreting the expressive potential of a very old model of portraiture, but through the, new contemporary machinic computational forms of artistic production. So that's what really stood out with this piece for me. And I should say too, tangentially, that, I was impressed by all of the various artists who embraced kind of new technologies and new modes of image making. That was kind of, I think, a sub theme for me that stood out across many of the submissions. Yeah, I love this monotype, and monotypes in particular to me are quite interesting just as a process, as a unique form of printmaking. And in this one, what drew me in was that, as viewers, we're confronted by what appears to be a frontal-facing figure. We see the outline of a head. But that most central expressive feature, I think, of the face, the eyes, are occluded from us. We can't see them through this opaque, inky black bar. And so instead, what we have to do is look through almost a series of semi-transparent veils, right? We have to look through the face into the background of the image. And when I look closely at this, it's apparent that we have some kind of a landscape in the background. It looks like a domestic architecture, some kind of home. So in this particular piece, it is the expressive capabilities of a portrait whose central features are occluded from us, that we can't see completely. And we have to explore and look into the depth, look into the background to figure out this just interesting, melange of elements. I love this work. I love collage and the kind of interpretive possibilities of collage. With this work in particular, the fragments of these faces appear to me to be taken from probably magazines or some kind of mass media publications, um, you know, cut out, isolated from their original context, and here reinterpreted in such an imaginative way. Um, One interesting thing to me about collage is that, because these appear to be from possibly advertisements, maybe, or again, some kind of magazine, is that the portrait is in that context, usually staged, right? But here, the staged portrait is reinterpreted and accompanied by these exploding colors of organic shapes that gives the portrait a kind of interesting biomorphic quality. To me, it kind of recalls, like coral, right? Attaching onto these figures. And I think the one at the far right, with just like the central eye and the fragment of a lip, it looks like there's a geological like gems embedded in a piece of rock. And so again, it's this um, accompaniment of, the expressive portrait, the expressive face with the organicism and the biomorphic and this gem and jewel-like quality that I really liked. Yeah, and into the jurors' choices. I'll say, like, again, as a bit of an aside, what really stood out to me was the range of materials and production techniques in this. And so here we have a really interesting example of mosaic. And, we have for me, thematically, really seems to be a kind of meditation on the gendered nature of domesticity and how that can be expressed in the human figure. Because, what we have in this mosaic seems to be, fragments of kitchenware, of ceramics. We have that kind of iconic blue and white ceramic border. But the central figure that captured my attention in the upper right corner, it looks to be, a portrait of a 19th century woman kind of lounging on a settee, a piece of, living room furniture with a really kind of bored and disinterested expression. But unfurling around this figure is this chaotic kind of jumble of other fragments of ceramics that look like they're illustrating kind of domestic scenes or domestic architecture. And so for me, accompanied by the title Housebound, right, the kind of suggestion that this figure is in some ways maybe entrapped in this chaotic jumble, trapped in the domestic sphere, I think for me, spoke to themes of gendered experience within the domestic realm. And so for that reason, I thought it was an interesting kind of gendered expression in this work. Yeah, this piece was so striking to me when I first encountered it because with a theme like expressions and portraiture, typically we're looking for um, the face as the expressive vehicle, right? But here we have something different because the artist has sort of similar to the monotype, the expressive features of the face are actually occluded from us. We're confronted with the figure who is turning away and looking askance. And the image is framed in such a way that the face is cut off from us, right? So this to me is really about the expressive potentiality in gesture as well. Um, in addition to that, though, the medium, right? The fact that this is a fabric weaving also brings up a lot of fascinating connotations. Um, it is traditionally or conventionally a gendered form of labor, gendered female, right? Like weaving, tapestry making, things like that. But also the modes of display associated with weavings and woven artworks, right? This could be like a rug that's displayed on a floor horizontally, or like a tapestry that's hung vertically and looked at like it was a picture. So there's a lot of different references, interpretive references, material references, aesthetic references, all embedded in this piece, which I think for me made it very exciting and kind of suggestive. Yeah, and this, again, thinking about the media, oil on canvas, it's a very traditional artistic media, but the facility of the artist is really, I think, quite exceptional. So where, I can be very excited by non-traditional media, this, I think, is just an exceptional execution of an oil painting where we see this really dramatic chiaroscuro lighting, right? Half of the face of this figure is in dramatic shadow, but also this expression of, I don't know, supplication of offering. This figure is looking up at us, offering us a kind of message of peace, as the title would suggest to us. I think additionally, what I found really intriguing in this work was the interplay between background and foreground. So, of course, our attention immediately goes to the figure looking up at us. But then looking into the background, we have this patterned motif of, a black and a white bird kind of intersecting and overlaying. And then when I look at the face, that motif almost merges with the figure's face in this kind of really delicate outline of one of the birds. So this I found just a really compelling and expressive portrait in a traditional media, but just so expertly executed that it immediately stuck with me in looking through the artworks. This was my pick for Best in Show for a number of reasons. I think to start with, it reminds me of the piece that we started out with in the sense that this is again a portrait bust of a significant figure, right? The title tells us this is Red Cloud, an important Lakota leader from the 19th century. So it speaks to, the a particular community within the history of this land. I also love the inscription on the piece, which in the Lakota language translates to all my relations. So there is a textual expression of solidarity, of community, of belonging within the work. And then the medium itself. I looked at the image when I was going through the submissions and I was like, this is really incredible. And then you look at the media and it's made out of recycled cardboard. I mean, it's just a really exceptional um, approach to sculpture in a kind of non-traditional manner. The detail in, all of the ceremonial wear, the detailing in the eagled figures, in the feathers. And there were other views of this image as well in the juror's packet that, just really across this entire piece, it's beautiful to look at. And also, I always like to, especially when we're looking at images digitally, things like media and dimensions are really important. This is over 6 feet tall, which is in and of itself, again, really incredible. And it brings to mind references to monuments and monumentality and the expressive possibilities within that long genre of artistic production, which is, I think, in the past decade or so, been put under immense pressure, particularly in the United States, but also around the world for, what kinds of figures we memorialize, what kinds of expressions of community and belonging do we deem worthy of memory. And so this piece, I think, engages with so many of those things, but in also just an exceptional manner in terms of craft and execution. So this really stood out to me, and I was so happy to be able to give it Best in Show for that and so many other reasons.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ewing, for your insight. It is clearly axiomatic that you know what you're talking about. Your title, researcher and educator, is shown by just the way that you break down the awards, the way that you explain your suggestions, your thoughts. So thank you so much for that. Um, Here are the awards that we're going to have listed on our website, and just like to have them in one place near the end of the video so everyone can see them all laid out. Um, Forward, we go to just a show collage. This isn't all the work that's in the show, but it is a pretty good representation of the work that we had submitted and the work that Mr. Ewing had to choose from. I do not envy him because, like he said, it was over 300 entries, and whittling that down to closer to 65 is not an easy task. Um, and now I have a question for you, Mr. Ewing. I mean, you mentioned through the awards, and I noticed that a lot of them are collage. And I noticed that there were you said transformative ways to portray the human portraits, and I think that here you can see that all the works kind of create a cool amalgamation of all the different ways that as the world changes, artists are now changing maybe their perceptions of themselves and how they're portraying that to the broader public. So my question to you is, what are some transformative ways that you are seeing, not only in this exhibition, but just in the broader art world that, artists are portraying themselves?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Thanks, Amani. And you're right. One thing that I did notice across so many of the pieces was this idea of trying to transform portraiture and transform images of the self. And I think one theme that I'm seeing in these works and in many other practices is, a focus not only on the history that shapes us as individuals and our perceptions of self, but also taking that history and like imagining it and projecting it into the future and like thinking about future selves and future imaginings. And so that's one thing that I saw like in some of the works in the show as well. So I would encourage people to look at the full selection because I think that you'll see meditations on history as it shapes human expression, but also like future imaginings. And there's some really exceptional uses of like digital collage and digital media to do that, which allows, you know, which allows for these new kind of transformative imaginings. So for me, that's always something exciting to see. We are always, whether we like it or not, slowly progressing into the future. And so to have a vision of like what that might look like and what people imagine for themselves can be really compelling and exciting.
Oh yeah, thank you. I mean, I really like how you broke that down and, kind of using the past as not, a basis to say what the future is going to be, but just a way to look back and kind of remember where we came from and keep that in mind as we do move forward. And like you said, we might not all want to, but we are moving towards the future. So just finding different ways to portray that I think is important. And that's why exhibitions like this, I think, are also important because it shows you that there's so many different ways to do so. You know, from recycled cardboard to monotype collage. It's such a wide range of expression, and it's all valid because it's all unique to us. So thank you so much. Um, and we have unfortunately reached the end of the juror talk today. Um, it was it was really one that I'm grateful for because, like we mentioned, I think it's important that we give exhibitions like this a platform to show people that there are different ways to portray yourself, and there's no one correct way. I think human expression is something that we've been doing from hieroglyphic drawings in the Egyptian times to a child that goes to school and draws what they think is a portrait of themselves. So I think that it's really important that we can show that and that we can put that across. Um, so yeah, I'm just very grateful for you, Mr. Ewing, for your time, for your energy, for the effort that you put in to make the exhibition what you made it. And it really was a joy, and I hope that we can work together in the future in some capacity.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much, Amani, and thanks to the Maryland Federation of Arts, and thanks to all of the artists that submitted work. Please keep making art. We need it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you all for joining us. This will be featured on our YouTube as well as other juror talks, other virtual award ceremonies, and just what we have going on at the Maryland Federation of Art. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned.